Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice, brought to you this week by Project MUSE and its new initiative, MUSE Open. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice. During this four-part series on open monograph platforms, publication, collaborations, and business models, I'll be speaking with Wendy Queen, director of Project MUSE, Barbara Kline Pope, director of the Johns Hopkins University Press, Dean Smith, director of Cornell University Press, and Saeed Chowdhury, associate dean for research data management and Hodson, director of the Digital Research and Curation Center at the Milton S. Eisenhower Library. In this first episode, I'm joined by Barbara and Wendy as we think through the current state of publishing open access monographs and how this fits into the mission of a university press and a platform like Project MUSE. Okay, so let's get an overview of the state of open access monographs. It seems like the definition of an OA monograph is evolving. Once simply putting monograph content into a freely available digital format, but it can be even more than that, right? So what types of efforts and strategies does the market seem to be coalescing around? And Barbara, why don't we start with you on that?
Okay. Open monographs, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, are really in their infancy. There certainly are book publishers, both for profit and not profit, who have open access programs, and publishers who have a couple of books that are open here and there. And open monographs have many different flavors. Of course, some of them have the most liberal Creative Commons licenses, in addition to unrestricted access. And some have no Creative Commons licenses, but have full text available free to anybody in the world. But in the short run, I really think that we'll see the options for serving up open monographs increasing, rather than authors and publishers coalescing around a common effort or any kind of really common strategy. And I think that typically happens in early business models. We see experimentation and models that fill different needs among the authors and readers being served. And as as time goes on and we have more experimentation, we may see some coalescing, but not quite yet.
Wendy, how does that sound to you? What are you seeing as well?
I think that, like Barbara said, there are many different examples that are happening now in open access monographs, and we just need more time and more opportunities to experiment to get any kind of I'd say trending in place.
Mm-hmm. Is there something that MUSE Open in particular is kind of honing in on, or?
I think later we'll talk about one important experiment that we're working on with, say, the Black Press in America, that give us a lot of opportunities to see what we can do with technology to help make OA publishing more robust and more innovative.
Okay. So let's provide a little background on sort of what the promise of OA monographs is, the benefits that they provide over their print counterparts, other than, the obvious here. But, we've heard a lot about discoverability, reach, engagement metrics, and so on. Wendy, why don't we start with you on that one?
Okay, so beyond discoverability, I look at there's some opportunities too to make new content connections between gated and closed content, or gated content and open content. And I think there's also the opportunity to experiment with what we define as a monograph, that through experimentations we're not sort of married to the old definition of what is a container of a book. Mm-hmm. So I feel that my experience has been that people have been more willing to experiment in this area, and that is going to lead to sort of a new definition of a monograph.
Right. Barbara, as a publisher, what interests you in that?
Well, I think open access monographs are really going to benefit our authors And of course, that's what publishers are all about, is making sure that authors can reach their readers. And this allows, new knowledge, new insights, and, maybe, with the open content being available to anyone in the world, we can have a pathway to more civil public discourse, which of course we're all longing for these days.
Right.
And of course, open content means that search engines are crawling the full text. And I know you talked about discoverability, and full text means that content is eminently discoverable, and people can determine if the content fits their needs. They can consume that content right there online, become more knowledgeable, and help us really spread the knowledge of the world around the world.
Right. And did you find that authors in particular, are they convinced of the same? Are they convinced of that same promise? I mean, are they comfortable with that?
We are honestly not seeing a lot of demand in the humanities and the social sciences yet for open access.
Right.
There may be other people on this podcast who have something else to say about that based on their own experience, but at Johns Hopkins University Press, we're not seeing huge demand for it, but we're ready for when that demand comes.
Is there anything you're doing in terms of sort of proactively educating the market in that sense, and sort of doing some outreach to help push that along a little bit?
Well, we certainly offer open access.
Yeah.
There are a number of frontlist books that will be coming out this year that will be open access. Those come with some subvention in order to make that happen. But we publish 150 books a year. We're talking about one or two frontlist books coming out this year. Right.
Okay. So Wendy, let's talk a little bit about MUSE Open. If you could tell us a little bit about how it came about, and how it fits into the OA market, and also how it's related to Project MUSE as well.
Sure. MUSE Open is a Mellon-funded initiative to host and support OA monographs on the existing MUSE platform. And it's our way to expand our content portfolio and services to publishers and scholars to include OA monographs. So pursuing the grant and the support for open access monographs is a natural fit for MUSE, as we have many of the distribution and scale pieces solved by starting with the existing platform. So the conversations that sparked MUSE Open started about 4 years ago when Dean Smith was director of MUSE, and we wanted to not only serve the needs of our publishers, but make sure OA content received the same services as gated content, as contrasted with solutions like institutional repositories. So our vision was to create the infrastructure to enable OA monographs to be more flexible in format, connected to a larger body of content, forming new types of content connections, and like we talked about, to be discoverable, but also preserved and measured much in the way gated content is.
MUSE Open is an initiative to distribute open access monographs on the Project MUSE platform with a best-in-class, scholar-informed user experience. Supported by a grant of nearly $1 million from the Mellon Foundation, Project MUSE's goal is to deliver OA monographs that will be broadly shared, widely discoverable, and richly linked. Through collaboration with its participating publishers, hundreds of books will be freely available on MUSE when it launches its newly redesigned platform this summer. MUSE Open amplifies MUSE's commitment to the scholarly community with OA monographs that are visible, fully integrated in the research process, and potentially transformative on their trusted and highly diversified platform. To find out more, go to muse.jhu.edu/MuseOpen and follow Project MUSE on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And then, so how have you worked with Barbara, in terms of bringing books onto the service?
How have we worked? So MUSE Open actually will launch this summer, and we are launching with, I think it's approximately 500 titles at this point. And they're actually a combination of things. We do have some, I'll call born OA content coming. Hopkins Press has a book in public health that's coming out this spring. We have books from the NEH Humanities Open ebook project coming in. We have publishers choosing to put some backlists in. And then we have experimental projects like Black Press in America as well. So it's a lot of different flavors of OA, and that's going to give us the opportunity to gather analytics and do those types of experiments I keep mentioning. But our goal as an aggregator and for our platform is to be able to handle whatever flavor of OA the publisher would like us to host and distribute, and make sure that their OA content, again, receives the same services as gated content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when sort of the way you've described MUSE Open to us here at Choice as we were preparing for this podcast, one of the things that seemed interesting was sort of the scholar-focused functionality that MUSE Open has designed into it. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
Sure. So one of the goals of the grant was to create a new reading experience for OA monographs. Up at the point that we wrote the grant, most OA content was being served in PDF. And so we wanted to create a more robust reader experience and sort of breaking the boundaries of the PDF for more flexibility now and in the future. And so MUSE decided to go with a richer browser-based experience serving the book in HTML.
Mm-hmm.
So to start that process of determining the experience, we hired a firm, Brilliant Experience, that's run by John Whalen, to interview scholars. So we went directly to the scholars, and we interviewed over 20 scholars in 3 rounds of design iterations to create a user experience catering to modern preferences.
Okay. So how does, you touched on HTML, I mean, describe why that is, or why that became sort of a preferred format in serving up OA content for you guys.
And I'm not necessarily saying it's preferred. I'm saying it's a necessary version. There are still many people that want a PDF as well. Mm-hmm. There are things that are basically easier to do in HTML. So scholars stress the need to want to be able to interact with the content. So enabling things like annotations, that's fairly easy to do in HTML, not so easy to do in PDF at this point.
Right.
And so we decided to take some restructuring of the design of the book and do things like put the references and footnotes in parallel with the content versus things like in a PDF, you have to sort of go back and forth and manage between several different documents to understand the context. So the HTML really allowed us to break out now for those pieces of functionality, but also in the future. So it's our way of making smaller, more flexible containers to deal with.
Okay. So you mentioned some of the interviewing and research you did around the experience and functionality for authors, and I'm wondering if, I think you did some as well with publishers too, and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about what you found out from that preliminary research around functionality for the platform.
From the publisher's perspective?
Yeah, if you could. Yeah, exactly.
The publishers that participate in MUSE, they're actually very flexible when it comes to the user experience. That they want to, because they want their content to be used, and they want their content to be used in whatever way the users desire. So they don't have, they haven't had a lot of demands on the actual reading experience. And I think most of what I've heard from the publishers is more gratitude that we're taking this step to get beyond the PDF.
Right. Excellent. Barbara, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, open access generally, and then maybe Project MUSE specifically, how that sort of uniquely supports a university press's mission, just from the publisher perspective.
Okay, happy to. We talked a little bit earlier about really the mission of university presses is to connect authors and readers, and really to spread the word about new scholarship and new research that will contribute both to knowledge, but also to move fields forward and to spread knowledge across fields. So, when we have open and free content, and when we use the communication power of the web, we can get two-way communication going, not just one way, from the author or the scholar to the reader. And that's incredibly important, because what I've learned from my experience, both as a publisher and in the world of science communication, is that the benefits and fulfilling our mission really goes beyond the scholar, and it's really part of the reader and the practitioner as well. And that scholar can learn from the reader and practitioner about what their needs for knowledge are, and that can affect a research agenda in that field. And so open content certainly is about, readers getting access to knowledge, but it's also about scholars getting access to what readers are thinking. And so it's really kind of a two-way web. So, science is a little bit further along, but right. No matter the discipline, I really think that monographs are pretty far from enjoying the funding necessary for the kind of global openness that we'd like to see, so that we can experience those benefits both for the scholar as well as for the reader.
Right.
So that's generally, for Project MUSE is supporting the mission of university presses, because it's already a destination for finding a really broad array of humanities, scholarship, and research. And so MUSE gives publishers a leg up on reaching the readers necessary for that diffusion of scholarship, and provides efficiencies. Not every publisher can invest in the technology or that usability research that you and Wendy were just talking about.
Right.
Customer service, sales, and marketing. And, MUSE is really there to provide that, those kinds of efficiencies for everyone.
You just heard from Wendy Queen and Barbara Kline Pope. This concludes episode 34, the first of 4 episodes on open monograph platforms, publications, collaborations, and business models. This episode was brought to you by Project MUSE. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where we talk with Dean Smith of Cornell University Press about what it takes to bring out-of-print monographs back as open publications.
In talking about the business model for the traditional monograph isn't working anymore. So I think probably already losing on those books that we're doing, but I estimate it probably cost us about $3,000 per title.
Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.